My name is Rosa Delgado, and I'm 66 years old. What I'm about to tell you still feels impossible. It began on the quietest, coldest day of my life, my husband's funeral. The church smelled of lilies and rain. Candles flickered beside his coffin, their light trembling like they knew something I didn't. I remember thinking, this isn't how his story was supposed to end. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Tell me where in the world you're listening from. I love seeing your cities and countries in the comments. It reminds me how far these stories travel. That's when my phone buzzed. Once, twice. I looked down, expecting another condolence message, but it wasn't from anyone I knew. Unknown number. I'm still alive. Trust no one. For a moment, my mind went blank. The letters blurred. Alive. My husband? I felt the phone slip from my hands and clatter against the floor. The sound echoed in the hollow silence of the church. Heads turned. Someone gasped. I forced myself to bend, pick it up, and hide the screen in my purse. No one could see that message. Not yet. Not until I understood what it meant. Across the aisle, my husband's stepchildren, Elena and Marco, stood side by side, black suits and perfect posture, watching me. Their expressions didn't match the occasion. No tears, just calm. Too calm. When our eyes met, Elena smiled. Small, polite, practiced. The kind of smile that hides a secret. I swallowed hard and sat back down, pretending to pray, but inside, every nerve screamed. Who sent that text? Was it real? The priest's voice blurred into the background. The Lord is my shepherd. Words drifted past me like smoke. The only sound I truly heard was my heartbeat, wild and uneven. I'm still alive. Those 3 words looped in my head, louder with each repetition. I tried to tell myself it was a cruel prank. Someone from the insurance office, maybe. But trust no one. That was something Matteo used to say. He'd whisper it jokingly whenever we watched mystery shows together. See, Rosita? That's how people get caught. They trust too easily. That memory hit me like a blade. When the ceremony ended, mourners came to hug me, to say he was in a better place. I nodded, smiled, thanked them, but my mind was far away, back at that message, back at the impossible idea that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the one in that casket. Outside, rain turned the ground to mud. People left in clusters, umbrellas bobbing like dark flowers. Elena and Marco guided me toward their car. Mom, Elena said. She never called me that before. Not even once. Her tone was soft, rehearsed. Let us handle everything. You just rest. Rest? My husband was gone, and she wanted me to rest. Marco added, Dad would have wanted a simple service. We didn't think it was necessary to invite everyone from town. I froze. Matteo loved his town. He fixed half the chairs in that church for free. He would have wanted the whole neighborhood there. But instead, it was a handful of people, a rushed funeral, and 2 stepchildren I barely recognized anymore. I forced a smile. You both were thoughtful. Thank you. Inside the car, no one spoke. Rain drummed against the roof in perfect rhythm with my heart. Halfway home, my phone buzzed again. Unknown. They're watching you. Don't trust your family. I nearly gasped out loud but caught myself. Elena was driving. Marco stared at his phone, his reflection pale in the window. I slid my phone deeper into my bag and pressed my hands together to stop them from shaking. By the time we reached home, I could barely stand. My house, our house, felt foreign. His tools still hung neatly in the shed, his jacket still draped on the chair. Every inch smelled of him. Elena followed me inside uninvited. She scanned the room the way a realtor does before a sale. Mom, this place is too big for you now. You'll need something smaller, safer, maybe a retirement village. I blinked. Retirement village? Matteo built this house with his hands. I know, she said, smiling too sweetly, but it's old. You shouldn't be alone here. It's not safe. Before I could respond, Marco stepped in with a folder. "By the way, the insurance paperwork needs your signature. It's just a formality." Insurance. Already? I took the folder and flipped it open. Dozens of pages, highlighted, stamped. One line caught my eye. Policy beneficiaries. Elena Ruiz and Marco Ruiz. I looked up. "You're the beneficiaries?" Marco nodded. "Dad changed it a few months ago. Said he didn't want you dealing with finances." My stomach dropped. Mateo always discussed money with me. Always. Something was wrong. Elena glanced at her brother, then back at me. "We'll come by tomorrow to help with arrangements. Get some rest, okay?" They left before I could ask another question. Their car's headlights vanished down the wet road. Silence settled. I sank onto the couch, the folder still in my lap. Pages fluttered under the ceiling fan like nervous wings. I opened my phone. No new messages. The earlier ones sat there, glowing quietly. Proof of my madness, or of something far worse. I scrolled back to Mateo's last real message before his death. It was 2 days before the accident. A photo of him in the workshop, smiling, holding up a small wooden box he'd just finished. Caption, "Last project before I retire, mi amor." Retire, not die. He was healthy. No heart condition. No warning. So why did they say his heart just stopped? And who sent those texts? At midnight, thunder cracked outside. The lights flickered. I heard the faintest sound, a metallic creak from the backyard, the workshop door. I grabbed a flashlight and opened the back door. Cold wind rushed in, carrying the smell of rain and varnish. The workshop stood dark, the door slightly open, moving in the wind. "Mateo?" I whispered before I could stop myself. No answer. I stepped inside. The beam of my flashlight swept across the benches, saws, chisels, shavings, and then froze on something small and black sitting in the corner, a voice recorder, tape labeled in Mateo's handwriting, "For Rosa, if anything happens." My hands trembled as I pressed play, static. Then his voice, tired, low, terrified. "Rosa, if you're hearing this, something went wrong. Don't trust them. Don't drink anything they offer you. Go to Lewis Park. He knows. I love you." The tape clicked off. I stared at the recorder in my shaking hands. The smell in the shop, it wasn't just wood and rain. It was something chemical, sweet, sharp, like antifreeze. I stumbled back into the rain, clutching the recorder, heart hammering so hard I thought I'd collapse. Thunder rolled over the hills, echoing the same 3 words that had started it all. I'm still alive. When sleep finally came, it wasn't rest, it was noise. Mateo's voice whispering through static, the recorder still clutched to my chest. "Go to Louis Park," he'd said. Louis Park. At dawn, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the mug he'd carved for me years ago. The handle was uneven, the glaze bubbled, but I loved it because he'd made it with his own hands. I traced the curve of the wood and thought, how can a man who made things so beautifully die in something so ugly? The rain had stopped. Light spilled across the workshop window, catching the dust like floating gold. Every particle looked alive, 100 memories turning in the air. We met in that same workshop 42 years ago. Back then, I was 24 and broke, cleaning houses in a town where nobody remembered your name unless you owed them money. He was the quiet carpenter everyone trusted, the one who could fix anything except his own loneliness. He used to hum when he worked, little tunes, old rancheras. The first time he noticed me watching him, he blushed. A grown man blushing over a girl with mop water on her shoes. "Need a shelf repaired, senora?" he'd teased. "I need a whole life repaired," I'd said without thinking. He laughed until tears ran down the sawdust on his cheeks. That laugh built everything we became. Our first date was at the county fair. 2 churros, 1 lemonade, a promise that someday we'd have a house with our own lemon tree. We never got the tree, but we got the house. the one where I now sat alone, reading messages from a dead man. I could almost smell him again, cedar, coffee, soap, and beneath it, that faint sweetness I'd smelled last night in the shop. That chemical sweetness, antifreeze. A knock shattered the memory. "Rosa, it's Elena." I shoved the recorder into a drawer and forced my face into something that looked calm. She came in holding grocery bags and a sympathy smile. "Brought you breakfast," she said. "You have to keep your strength." Inside the bag, orange juice, bread, and 2 takeout coffees. She pushed one toward me. "Drink, Mom. You need it." My fingers tightened around the cup. Mateo's voice rang in my head. "Don't drink anything they offer you." "Thanks, Mija," I said, pretending to sip. The smell hit first, familiar, bitter, with a faint chemical bite beneath the roast. I set it down gently. She talked fast, filling the room with words about lawyers, wills, bank accounts, about streamlining paperwork, about peace of mind. Each phrase sounded rehearsed, as if she'd practiced it in a mirror. I studied her face, flawless makeup, tired eyes that didn't match the smile. Mateo had raised her after her mother died. He'd built her a desk for school, worked overtime to pay her tuition. Now she was discussing him like a transaction. "I found some of Dad's papers," I said carefully. "Old insurance forms." Her head snapped up. "Where?" "In the shop." A pause, then that same gentle smile. "You shouldn't be going in there. Too many memories." She stood, collected both coffees, and moved toward the sink. "I'll pour these out. They've gone cold." Cold. They were ice cold. She'd never intended for me to drink. When she left, I poured the contents of my cup into the drain. A thin, oily rainbow swirled across the surface. Not coffee. Not anything meant for a living body. I waited until her car disappeared before I called the number Mateo had whispered. Louis Park. "Paramedic Division," a gruff voice answered. "Louis Park speaking." "Mr. Park, you don't know me. My name is Rosa Delgado. My husband mentioned you, Mateo Delgado." Silence, then a breath. "Rosa, where are you?" The way he said my name told me everything. He knew. He'd been waiting. He arrived an hour later. A tall man in a faded uniform jacket, eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. "I worked the scene the day your husband was found," he said. "It never sat right with me." He pulled a folder from his bag. Photos, reports, timestamps. The official story said cardiac arrest in his truck. But look here. No burn marks, no steering wheel bruising, no sign of impact, and he flipped another photo. A mug on the dashboard, half full. Lab tests showed traces of ethylene glycol. Antifreeze. My stomach turned. "You tested it?" He nodded. "I kept a sample. I shouldn't have, but something told me I'd need it." I covered my mouth. "He didn't die of a heart attack." "No," Louis said quietly. "He was poisoned, slow acting, disguised as a natural collapse." I pressed a hand to my chest. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because someone made sure you wouldn't see the full report. The hospital filed under private family request. That means a relative block disclosure. Elena. Marco. The room tilted. I gripped the table edge until my knuckles whitened. Louis slid the recorder toward me. "Keep this safe. It's proof your husband knew what was coming." "I already have one," I said. "He left it for me." His brows knit. "Then he trusted you more than anyone." For a moment, the air thickened with the weight of everything unsaid. Betrayal, guilt, the quiet courage of a dying man trying to save his wife. "What do I do now?" I whispered. "Don't confront them yet," Louis said. "If they poisoned him, they'll try again. I'll take the samples to a friend at the lab. Off record, you stay alive until I call." Stay alive. It sounded like an order, not advice. He left through the back door, vanishing into the sunlight. I locked the gate behind him and leaned against it, shaking. That night, I opened Mateo's toolbox. Every wrench was in its place, every screw labeled. But hidden beneath the tray, I found something I'd never seen before. A small envelope sealed with wax. Inside, a key and a scrap of paper. Locker 214, Bus Depot downtown. My heart pounded. Why would Mateo have a locker in this city? I stared at the key under the kitchen light. It gleamed like a question waiting to be asked. Then headlights swept across my window. A car idled outside. Too quiet, too long. I turned off the lamp and peered through the curtain. Elena's black SUV. The engine ran for a full minute. Then the headlights flicked off. Darkness swallowed the yard. I grabbed the phone, hands trembling. Before I could dial Louis, a new message appeared on the screen. Unknown. Don't open the door. I froze. My breath fogged the glass. A shadow moved past the porch light. Slow, deliberate, familiar. Marco. He knocked once, twice. Then the voice I'd once loved like my own child said through the door, soft, almost pleading, "Mom, we just want to talk." Every word felt rehearsed, like the calm before another lie. I didn't answer. I backed away step by step until I reached the hallway. The knocking stopped. A whisper followed. Elena's this time. Sharp as glass. She knows. The porch light flickered out. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle a cry. The phone vibrated again. Unknown. They won't stop until you're gone. My heart thundered so loud I thought they'd hear it. And then, footsteps retreating, the car starting, silence again. I stood in the dark for what felt like hours before daring to breathe. The recorder on the table blinked once, its tiny red light pulsing like a heartbeat. I pressed play, static. Then Mateo's voice, quieter this time, as if the message had continued beyond what I'd heard before. If they come for you, don't fight them alone. The truth is hidden where we first met. Where we first met? The workshop, the smell of cedar, the place where everything began. I ran my fingers along the wooden table, feeling the grooves he'd carved decades ago, our initials side by side. Underneath, the wood felt different, softer, newly cut. I pried at it with a screwdriver. A hidden compartment popped open. Inside, an old cassette tape and a folded photograph. The photo showed Mateo shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize, a stranger in a business suit standing beside Elena. On the back, Mateo had written one line, "If anything happens to me, this is who paid them." My hands trembled so badly the picture slipped from my grasp. It fluttered to the floor, landing face up. The man's smile was the kind you see on people who believe they'll never get caught. Outside, thunder rolled again, distant but certain. The sound of something gathering. I looked at the photo, the key, and the recorder. 3 clues, 3 doors I hadn't opened yet. Tomorrow I would. But tonight I sat beside the window, clutching Mateo's jacket, whispering to the dark, "I'm not alone, mi amor. You left me the trail. I'll follow it." The phone buzzed once more on the table. Unknown. Hurry. I barely slept. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps, every gust of wind like someone whispering my name. When dawn finally arrived, it felt gray, metallic, like the world had forgotten color. I dressed quickly, slipped the small locker key into my pocket, and tucked the photograph and recorder into my bag. Before leaving, I walked into the workshop one more time. Mateo's chair was still pulled out slightly, as if he'd just stepped away. I touched the backrest. It was warm in my memory, cold in reality. "I'll find them," I whispered. "I promise." The road to the bus depot wound through the old industrial quarter, a place that always smelled like rust and coffee beans from the roasting plant nearby. People hurried past, faces blank, each locked in their own world. None of them knew that inside my coat pocket, I carried a clue that could expose a murder. Locker 214 was at the far end of the terminal, near the vending machines that never worked. The number glared at me like an accusation. My hands shook as I slid the key into the lock. It turned easily, almost too easily. Inside lay a manila envelope thick with papers, and on top of it, a flash drive. No note, no handwriting, just a smell of cedar, faint but unmistakable. I pulled everything out and tucked it under my arm. "Excuse me," a voice said behind me. I turned so fast the envelope nearly slipped. It was an older janitor in a blue uniform holding a mop. "You dropped something," he said, pointing to a small piece of paper that had fallen from the locker. I bent to pick it up. It was a receipt from a pharmacy in the city, dated the day before Mateo's supposed accident. The buyer's name, Elena Ruiz, the item, ethylene glycol coolant. My stomach knotted. I thanked the man and hurried out, clutching the envelope so tight the paper crinkled. At a small cafe 2 blocks away, I sat in the corner booth and opened the envelope. Bank statements, insurance documents, signed forms with forged handwriting, and at the bottom, a single photo of Elena and Marco shaking hands with the same man from last night's photograph. The caption printed in small letters, "David Alcott, Regional Insurance Manager, Suncor Life," the same company that held Mateo's new policy. My phone buzzed, a message from the unknown number again. "They'll find you at the depot. Leave now." I glanced around. 2 men in suits had just entered, scanning the room too casually. One reached inside his jacket. I stuffed the papers back into the envelope, left a few bills on the table, and slipped out through the back door. Rain began again, soft but relentless. By the time I reached the main street, the men were outside the cafe looking around. One spoke into a phone, then nodded toward the corner. I ducked into a bus and paid cash, sitting near the back. The engine growled. The city blurred into wet glass. My pulse refused to slow. Whoever those men were, they weren't strangers. They were sent. But by who? Elena? Marco? Alcott? Or all 3? Half an hour later, I got off near the Riverside Park and called Lewis Park from a payphone. When he answered, his voice was taut. "Rosa, where are you? I've been trying to reach you." "Someone's following me," I said. I found an envelope in a locker, bank records, a name, proof they worked with a man from Suncor Life. Silence. Then, "That's exactly what I feared." "What do you mean?" I checked the lab results. Mateo's blood sample was tampered with before it reached the coroner. Someone high up buried the toxicology report. That takes money and connections. I swallowed hard. This Alcott? He's the connection? Most likely. He handles high-value insurance clients. If your husband's policy was inflated suddenly, Alcott approved it. He'd profit from kickbacks if your stepchildren filed the claim. The phone crackled. "Lewis?" Static, then a faint click. The line went dead. I looked up and froze. Across the street, the 2 men from the cafe were standing under a bus stop awning, staring directly at me. One raised a phone to his ear. I dropped the receiver and ran. The park path was slick with mud. My shoes sank with every step, my lungs burning. Behind me, voices shouted, mail, urgent, closing fast. I cut across the grass toward the riverside. Boats rocked against the pier, ropes creaking. A ferry horn moaned in the distance. I spotted a small footbridge ahead and sprinted for it. Rain lashed my face. My hair stuck to my skin. Halfway across, a car screeched onto the path from the opposite side. Headlights blinded me. "Rosa!" Lewis's voice. He jumped out of the driver's seat, waving frantically. "Get in!" I didn't hesitate. The moment I slammed the door, he hit the gas. The tires spun through puddles. The car fishtailed, then found grip and roared forward. "Who were they?" I asked, gasping. "Corporate muscle," he said grimly. "Not cops. Probably hired by Alcott." We drove in silence for several minutes, the windshield wipers beating like a countdown. Lewis finally pulled into an abandoned warehouse lot and cut the engine. Rain drummed on the roof, steady and unending. "Let me see the envelope," he said. I handed it over. He scanned the documents, his jaw tightening with each page. "This is enough to open a federal case," he said. "Fraud, conspiracy, homicide. But we need one more piece. Proof that Mateo didn't sign the insurance changes willingly." I hesitated. He left a recording. Louis nodded. Then we get that authenticated. But Rosa, once we turn this in, they'll know you're alive and dangerous to them. A laugh escaped me, bitter and small. I've been dead to them since the day he died. We drove to Louis's cousin's house outside town, a forensic analyst named Maribel. Her living room smelled of acetone and lavender. Within an hour, she had the recorder connected to her laptop. She cleaned the audio, isolated background noise. When Mateo's voice played through the speakers, I nearly broke. Rosa, if you're hearing this, something went wrong. They want the shop, the insurance. Don't sign anything. Maribel hit pause. That's clear enough for court, she said, but there's more. She zoomed in on a faint background sound. A second voice. Dad, just sign it. You're overthinking. It was Marco. Undeniable. Tears filled my eyes. He was right there. Louis touched my shoulder. You've got your proof, Rosa. Now we just need to survive long enough to deliver it. We decided to hide the files overnight. Maribel copied everything onto an encrypted drive and sealed the originals in a fireproof case. You'll rest here, she said. I'll keep watch. But sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mateo's face, calm, gentle, unaware that the hands he trusted most were signing his death warrant. Around 3 a.m., headlights flashed outside. A car pulled into the driveway and idled. Louis peered through the curtain. Not police, he whispered. The engine revved once, then cut. We waited. Footsteps crunched on gravel. A shadow crossed the porch window. Maribel reached for the light switch. Don't, I hissed. The door handle rattled. Once, twice, then a heavy thud. They were trying to break in. Louis grabbed his sidearm. Stay back! The next few seconds blurred into noise. Glass shattering, shouts, the crack of a warning shot. The attackers fled into the dark, tires screeching away down the road. When silence returned, my knees gave out. Louis caught me before I hit the floor. They know we have the evidence, he said. We need to move before dawn. I looked toward the broken window. Rain streamed through it, cold and merciless, soaking the curtains. For a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing at the tree line, a tall man in a dark coat watching. But when I blinked, he was gone. By morning, we were back on the highway heading toward the city. Louis had called an old contact at the district attorney's office, someone he trusted. If we can get these files into his hands, it's over, he said. I stared out the window as the landscape rolled by. Fields, gas stations, billboards promising miracles. All lies, like the promises that had buried my husband. My phone buzzed again, another message from the unknown number. You're close, but there's a mole. I looked at Louis. Who else knows we're coming? Only Maribel and the DA contact. The message blinked again. Don't go to the DA's office, he's part of it. My blood ran cold. Louis frowned at my face. What is it? I showed him the screen. He stared at the message for a long time, then whispered, Then who the hell are we supposed to trust? Before I could answer, a truck swerved across the median straight toward us. Louis yanked the wheel. The world exploded in metal and glass. Everything went white. Metal screamed. Glass shattered like 1,000 gunshots. For a heartbeat, I felt nothing. No pain, no sound, just floating. Then came the impact. The seatbelt tore into my chest and the world turned upside down. When I opened my eyes, the car was sideways in a ditch, smoke curling from the hood. Rain hissed against the engine. My ears rang like church bells underwater. Louis! No answer. I crawled toward him, his head slumped against the wheel, blood running down his temple. I pressed 2 shaking fingers to his neck. A pulse. Faint, but there. Hold on, I whispered. Hold on. My own shoulder burned. Something warm trickled down my arm. I reached for my phone, but it was gone, flung somewhere into the dark. Headlights appeared on the road above us. A black SUV slowed, then stopped. 2 men stepped out, umbrellas snapping open. Panic clawed up my throat. Same suits, same faces from the cafe. I dragged myself out through the shattered window and into the mud. Every movement sent lightning through my ribs. I crouched low, hiding behind the wreckage. One of the men leaned into the broken window, shining a flashlight. "Nothing in the passenger seat," he said. "She's gone." The other muttered, "Find her. Alcott wants the files tonight." I pressed my fist to my mouth to stop a sound. Louis groaned faintly from inside. They'd hear him. I grabbed a broken mirror shard from the ground, the only weapon I had, and threw it toward the trees. It crashed through branches. Both men turned. I ran. The woods were slick with rain, roots twisting like snakes. I stumbled, fell, pushed myself up again. Branches slapped my face. Behind me, flashlights cut through the darkness. "Spread out! She's bleeding! Follow the trail!" I ran harder. My lungs screamed. Every breath tasted like blood and dirt. Then, through the trees, a small cabin came into view, light flickering inside. I pounded on the door. It opened a crack and a woman's voice said, "Are you hurt?" I didn't even think. "Please, they're after me." She pulled me inside and bolted the door. The cabin smelled of herbs and kerosene. An older woman, gray braid, weathered hands, led me to a chair by the fire. "You're bleeding," she said, fetching a towel. "Sit still." I tried to focus. "Do you have a phone?" She nodded toward a rotary one on the shelf. "But the line's spotty in storms." I lifted the receiver. Dead silence. "They cut the lines sometimes," she murmured. "Hunters or thieves?" Hunters, or something worse. When I looked out the window, the forest was quiet again. Too quiet. The woman, her name was Nora, poured me a cup of tea. "You running from someone?" she asked softly. "Yes." "Your husband?" I froze. Her eyes flicked to the recorder peeking from my bag. "I saw the name scratched on that label when you sat down. Mateo Delgado." My chest tightened. "You know him?" A long pause. Then she said, "He came here 2 months ago." My heart stopped. "What did you just say?" "He was hurt. Said people were after him. Asked to use my phone. I let him. He called someone, a man named Park." "Louis?" "He left before dawn, never came back." My hands trembled around the cup. "You're sure it was him?" "I don't forget faces," she said. "He had kind eyes, said he couldn't trust his own family." The room swayed. Alive. He'd been alive. Here. Even after the world buried him. Before I could speak, headlights flashed through the window again. Nora's expression darkened. "That's not the police." She grabbed a shotgun from behind the door and whispered, "Back door, go!" I stumbled into the rain, clutching my bag. Behind me, Nora shouted, "You picked the wrong cabin!" Then a gunshot, then another. I ran until my legs gave out. At sunrise, I woke on the shoulder of a service road, mud-caked and shaking. A passing truck slowed. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, leaned out. "You all right, ma'am?" I need a hospital." He helped me into the cab and drove fast, country radio humming softly as if the world wasn't falling apart. At the ER, nurses swarmed me. Questions, lights, stitches, monitors. They said I'd lost a lot of blood but would live. I wanted to tell them about Louis, about Nora, about the men. But my throat couldn't form words. After what felt like hours, they moved me to a private room. Bandages hugged my ribs. The beeping of the monitor felt too calm for what was happening outside. A nurse entered, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Delgado, you're lucky. Your family's been notified." My heart stuttered. "What?" "They're on their way. Said they'll handle your discharge." "No." I sat up, pain shooting through my side. "Do not let them—" Too late. The door opened. Elena walked in, a bouquet of lilies in her hand, her smile warm and venomous. "Mom," she said softly, "you look terrible." I froze. "What are you doing here?" "Visiting. We were so worried when the police said you'd been in an accident. I can't imagine how scared you must have been." She placed the flowers on the table, then leaned close. "But you shouldn't have run. You make people nervous when you do that." I tried to reach for the call button. She grabbed my wrist. Hard. Her whisper cut like ice. "Where's the evidence?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Rosa. We found your little friend Louis. He's alive. Barely. The police think it was a random hit and run." She smiled. How tragic. My stomach twisted. Shh, she said, smoothing my hair like a child's. "You need rest. The doctor said you'll be discharged in an hour. We'll take you home." Her eyes glimmered. "Just like old times." I forced a breath. "What did you do to him?" "Nothing yet," she said. "But if you don't give me that flash drive, accidents happen." She straightened, smoothing her dress. "See you soon, Mom." Then she left. I waited until her footsteps faded, then pulled the IV from my arm. Pain flared sharp and hot. I didn't care. I had to get out. The hallway was empty except for a janitor mopping near the elevator. He looked up as I passed. Old, tired, kind. "Going somewhere, ma'am?" "Just need air." He nodded slowly. Basement door stays unlocked at night. He turned back to his mop, and as I passed, he whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. "Louis sent me." I stopped. "What?" "Don't talk, just go. There's a car behind the ambulance bay. Keys in the visor. Drive south." I stared at him, his face calm, eyes full of urgency. "How do I know you're not one of them?" I whispered. He smiled faintly. "Because your husband saved my daughter's life once. 10 years ago. He told me, if anything happens, help Rosa." I covered my mouth, tears threatening. Mateo again, always 2 steps ahead, even in death. I nodded and slipped into the stairwell. The basement smelled of bleach and loneliness. Machines hummed behind closed doors. When I reached the loading dock, dawn was breaking. Pale, watery, unreal. The car was exactly where he said. I climbed in, trembling, and checked the visor, a key, and a folded piece of paper, in neat handwriting. "Go to Hillcrest Cemetery. Plot 14B. He left you something." I froze. Hillcrest, where Mateo's coffin was buried. My hands shook as I started the engine. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. I didn't know if they were for me or the people I was leaving behind. Either way, I drove. By the time I reached Hillcrest, the sun was high. Gravediggers were finishing a service nearby. No one paid attention to an old woman limping between headstones. Plot 14B was near the edge of the hill, shaded by a weeping willow. His name was carved deep into the granite. Mateo Delgado, 1958-2025. I knelt, pressing my palm to the stone. "Did you plan all of this, mi amor?" I whispered. "Even now?" Something caught the light near the base. A small brass plate newly screwed into the soil. I pried it up. Beneath it was a metal box sealed tight. Inside, a second flash drive and a letter in his handwriting. "Rosa, if they hurt you, this is the proof they can't bury. Take it to the reporter named Elena Duarte at Channel 5. She's clean. She'll tell the world." I read the letter twice, tears blurring the ink. Then I heard it. A car door shutting behind me. I turned. Elena Ruiz stood by her SUV, gun in hand. "Mom," she said softly, "don't make me do this." The willow branches moved in the wind like thin green fingers. I could smell wet earth and lilies, the same scent from the funeral. And there she was, Elena in her black coat standing beside Mateo's grave. Her hair clung to her cheeks, rain traced silver lines down her face. If anyone had walked by, they would have thought she was a grieving daughter. Only I knew she'd come to finish what she'd started. "Mom," she said softly, lowering the gun to her side. "Not at me. Not yet. You shouldn't have come here." My throat felt raw. "You shouldn't have either." Wind carried our voices through the headstones. Somewhere below us, thunder muttered. She took a step closer. "I didn't want to hurt you, but you made it impossible." "By surviving?" I asked. Her jaw tightened. "By digging." I looked down at the open metal box in my hands, the flash drive, the letter. This was his last gift to me. Her eyes flicked to the box, then back to mine. "Hand it over, Rosa, please. It's not what you think." "What is it then? Murder, insurance fraud, or just a business deal gone wrong?" She shook her head. "You don't understand. Dad was sick." I almost laughed. "He built a table the night before he died." "Sick in his head," she said. "He thought everyone wanted his money. He changed the policy back and forth so many times he didn't know what he was signing. He told Alcott you were manipulating him." The words landed like stones. "That's a lie," I whispered. "Maybe, but it's the story everyone believes." She stepped closer. "You can't win this. The police, the lawyers, they all know our version. You'll just look like a bitter old woman trying to cash in." Her tone softened again, almost kind. "Give me the drive. We'll tell them you found nothing. We'll walk away." Behind her, the clouds split open with a crack of light. For a moment, she looked small, like the girl who once cried over broken dolls and asked me to braid her hair. I wanted to believe that version still existed, but then I remembered the poison in the coffee, Louis bleeding in the car, Nora's cabin in flames behind me. "No," I said quietly. "I won't lie for you." Her face hardened. "Then you'll lose everything." "Not everything," I said. "I still have him." I pointed to the grave. She followed my gesture and froze. A siren wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees. Her expression cracked for the first time. "What did you do?" "I told the truth," I said. "I sent the file before I came." She blinked. "To who?" A voice answered from behind the trees. "To me. Louis." He stepped out from the shadows, his arm in a sling, face pale but alive. 2 uniformed officers followed him up the path. Elena's mouth fell open. You were supposed to be dead?" Louis's voice was calm, almost gentle. "That seems to happen a lot around here." She took a step back. "You can't prove anything." "Actually," Louis said, nodding toward me, "we can. Your father recorded everything, and thanks to Rosa, it's now in the hands of the press." The rain came harder, flattening her hair, washing streaks of mascara down her face. For a moment, she just stood there, caught between rage and disbelief. Then her shoulders dropped. The weapon slipped from her grasp and landed softly in the mud. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said. "He promised me. He said no one would get hurt." Louis motioned to the officers. "Let's go." As they led her away, she turned to me. Her voice was small now, almost a child's. "Mom, I loved him too." I wanted to say something, anything. But no words came. Just rain and distance and the sound of her shoes sinking into the mud as they took her away. The graveyard emptied slowly. Louis stayed behind, watching the horizon. "She'll tell them everything," he said. "Alcott, the bribes, the forged signatures." I nodded, staring at the headstone. "He planned all of this," I whispered. "He knew they'd come here." Louis smiled faintly. "Your husband was a craftsman. Even his revenge was well built." We stood in silence for a long time, rain turning the soil darker around Mateo's name. When Louis finally left, I stayed. I knelt beside the grave and pressed the letter to the stone. "I did what you asked," I whispered, "but I'm still not sure if I forgave them. Or myself." The wind moved through the willow branches, soft and slow. Somewhere inside that sound, I thought I heard his voice, low, familiar, the way he used to call my name from the workshop, Dor. Rosita. Maybe it was memory. Maybe it was something more. Either way, I whispered back, "I'm listening." For the first time in months, the rain stopped. The sky was pale and tired, like it had cried itself empty. I sat on the porch with a blanket over my shoulders, listening to the quiet that followed chaos. No sirens, no footsteps on gravel, just wind moving through the lemon trees. Mateo never lived to see bloom. Elena was in custody. Marco had vanished. Louis said Alcott was still under investigation. which I knew meant untouchable for now. Peace looked ordinary from the outside, but inside me it felt wrong, like sitting in a house you know is still on fire somewhere deep in the walls. Louis arrived mid-morning, arm still in a sling, a folder under his good arm. "Thought you'd want to see this," he said. He poured us both coffee, the safe kind, and sat across from me at the kitchen table Mateo had built 40 years ago. "They processed Elena's statement last night," he said. "She talked." I braced myself. "About Alcott? She gave us everything. Dates, transfers, names. Turns out your husband's last project wasn't a cabinet. It was a paper trail. He'd started documenting the fraud before he ever got sick." He opened the folder. Bank logs, printouts, emails. Suncor Life wasn't just one dirty manager. It's a whole ring. Kickbacks, false deaths, payouts to shell accounts overseas. I stared at the papers, then at Louis. "So they killed him to keep it quiet." He nodded. "And used your stepkids to make it look clean." We drove to the city that afternoon, the air heavy with that after-storm clarity that makes everything look too sharp. The plan was simple: deliver Mateo's evidence to an investigative reporter, Elena Duarte, the one he'd named in his letter. Her office was in an old brick building downtown, 5th floor, a wall of headlines pinned behind her desk. "Corporate corruption, whistleblower vanishes, truth in the shadows." She looked up as we entered. "You must be Rosa Delgado," she said, standing to shake my hand, "and you must be the paramedic who's been dodging death reports." Louis smiled thinly. "That's me." She gestured to 2 chairs. "I've been waiting for this story. Your husband contacted me months ago, said he had proof that Suncor was running a ghost policy scheme. He went silent before we could meet." "He didn't go silent," I said. "They silenced him." Her jaw tightened. "Then let's make them listen." Louis handed her the flash drive. "Everything's on there. Audio files, financials, voice authentication, the works." She slid it into her laptop. The screen filled with folders labeled in Mateo's tidy block letters. Policy chain, Elena, Marco, Alcott. The first file opened to his voice. "If anyone hears this, it means I failed to keep Rosa safe. Don't let them bury the numbers. Look for account J09. It's where the bribes go." Elena Duarte leaned back slowly. This is gold, but it's dangerous. Once this airs, they'll come after all of us." "I'm already living on borrowed time," I said. She studied me. "You're not what I expected." "Neither was widowhood," I answered. For the next few hours, her team copied documents, verified signatures, matched them with public filings. Each confirmation was another nail in Suncor's coffin. By evening, the office hummed with tension, the quiet kind before a broadcast that might ruin powerful people. Elena Duarte turned from her computer. "We go live at 9 tomorrow morning. Nationwide feed. Once it's out, there's no putting it back." Louis exhaled. About time someone did the right thing. She nodded. "We'll keep you both off-site until it airs. There's a safe flat upstairs." She walked us to a narrow stairwell. No visitors, no calls from unknown numbers, and if anything feels off, don't open the door. Her eyes lingered on me. "Your husband must have been extraordinary." "He was," I said. "Still is." That night, I couldn't sleep. The city buzzed below, neon and noise. But inside the small apartment, everything felt frozen. Louis had drifted off on the couch, one arm across his eyes. I sat by the window, watching the traffic lights blink red, yellow, green, over and over. The world moving in circles while mine refused to move at all. At midnight, my phone vibrated. A new message, from the same number. "You're being watched again." I froze. Another vibration followed. Not everyone upstairs works for the news. I glanced at Louis, still asleep, then toward the hallway outside. A shadow shifted under the door crack. I stood silently, heart thudding. Someone was there. The knock was soft. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. The pattern Mateo used when he came home from the shop. My hand trembled around the doorknob. "Who is it?" No answer. Another message flashed on my phone. "Don't open. Wait." Louis stirred. "What's wrong?" "Someone's outside." He rose quickly, checked the peephole. "No one there now." When he turned back, his face had gone pale. "What?" "The elevator light's on. It stopped on this floor." We heard footsteps fading down the hall, quiet, deliberate. Then nothing. Morning came gray and sleepless. Elena Duarte met us in the control room, headset around her neck, eyes sharp. "You two all right? Security said the night guard saw movement on your floor." Louis nodded. "We're fine." She glanced at me. "You sure you still want this to go live?" "Yes," I said. "He deserves it." At 8:57 a.m., the red light above the camera blinked on. I watched from the side as she began the broadcast. "Today we reveal evidence of a multi-million-dollar insurance fraud network operating under Suncor. Life..." My husband's name appeared on screen, his handwriting, his voice playing through the studio speakers. For the first time, his truth was louder than their lies. I felt tears, quiet and clean, slide down my cheeks. Then one of the interns rushed in, face white. "Signal's dropping! We're losing the feed!" Elena yanked off her headset. "What do you mean?" "The uplink's dead. It's like someone cut..." The lights flickered. Screens went black. Through the glass wall of the studio, I saw movement. 2 men in maintenance uniforms walking straight toward the server room. Louis grabbed my arm. "Rosa, we have to move." "But the broadcast..." "Trust me," he said. "They're here for you." We slipped out the side door into the stairwell as alarms began to chirp faintly in the distance. Down one flight through a service corridor that smelled of ozone and dust. My phone buzzed again. "They're inside. Go to the roof." I looked at Louis. "It's him again." He nodded. "Whoever he is, he's saved us twice. Let's hope he's right again." We climbed. At the roof door, I hesitated. "If this is a trap..." "It's a better view," he said grimly, pushing it open. Cold wind hit my face. The skyline stretched before us, sunlight slicing through morning haze, sirens echoing below. A helicopter passed overhead, unmarked, slow. Its downdraft whipped my hair across my face. Louis pointed. "Look, Channel 5's backup transmitter. They're still sending the story." Far below, I could hear Duarte's voice returning, faint but alive through the city speakers. "And authorities confirm an arrest warrant has been issued for David Alcott." I let out a shaky laugh. "He did it, Louis. Mateo did it." Then I saw something move on the opposite rooftop, a silhouette standing still, watching us through binoculars. The phone buzzed once more. "They know where you are. Don't go back down." I turned to Louis, wind tearing at my words. "What now?" He looked at me, jaw set. "Now we finish what he started." The city had not yet recovered from the broadcast. By dusk, headlines flashed "Insurance Giant Under Fire," and every channel repeated Mateo's name like a hymn of truth, finally set free. But peace never follows exposure. It only changes its disguise. From the rooftop, Rosa watched the skyline pulse with orange light. Sirens moaned far away, blending with the evening wind. Louis was downstairs on the phone with the district office, securing witness protection. But she stayed by the ledge, drawn to the place where the shadow had stood the day before. A faint shoe print still marked the gravel. It hadn't rained since morning, and the edges were sharp, recent. Whoever had been watching hadn't vanished into myth. They'd come back. She turned the print over in her mind like a coin. What side of it was fear and what side was warning? Her phone vibrated again. Unknown. "You need to see what's inside the envelope. Don't trust the police. Don't trust Louis." Rosa's pulse fluttered. The envelope? She looked down at her bag, the one she had carried from the studio. Inside was a brown envelope she hadn't opened. The reporter had slipped it to her after the broadcast failed and said only, "Keep this safe until it's over." She tore the flap carefully. Inside, photographs. Not of Alcott, not of her sons, of Mateo. One showed him outside a glass building, shaking hands with a man she didn't recognize. Another, inside a hospital hallway, date-stamped a week after his supposed death. And the third, worst of all, was taken in this very city, months later. He looked older, thinner, but alive. The phone buzzed again. "He did it for you. Meet me where it began." The message ended with coordinates, a rooftop barely 3 blocks away. Rosa's throat went dry. "Louis?" she called. No answer. She went downstairs. The living room light flickered, an old bulb fighting exhaustion. His phone sat on the table, still connected to a silent call. The line was open, but no one spoke. The front door swayed on its hinge. Outside, the alley smelled of oil and rain. She pulled her coat tight and followed the coordinates through narrow streets. Every sound seemed magnified. The hum of a neon sign, a cat jumping from a trash bin, her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. The second rooftop was smaller, framed by 2 derelict warehouses. When she pushed open the access door, wind roared against her face, carrying the sting of sea air. A figure stood near the edge, half hidden by the twilight. Tall, broad-shouldered, a coat flapping in the gusts. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. Then he turned. "Rosa." The voice was soft, cracked by time, but unmistakable. Her knees weakened. "Mateo?" He stepped closer. His hair had gone whiter, his eyes dimmed with sleeplessness. But it was him, every line of his face carved by years she had mourned. "I couldn't let them find you," he said. "If I'd come back, they'd have killed you, too." She could barely speak. "You faked your death." "I had to. Alcott's men already poisoned my blood once. They would have finished the job. I made the doctor sign the papers, paid him to disappear me." He took a shuddering breath. "I sent the messages. Every one of them." The world tilted. All those nights of fear, the warnings, the unseen guardian. It had been him. "But why stay hidden even after the broadcast?" she whispered. "Because the man behind it all isn't gone yet." He handed her a folder wrapped in plastic. Inside are names of the investors who funded Suncor's ghost policies. Alcott was only a front. The real architect is still free, and he has people inside the police. Rosa opened the folder. The first document bore a seal she recognized, the Regional Justice Department, Louis's signature. She staggered back. "No, Louis helped me." Mateo's eyes filled with sorrow. "He was my friend once, but when they offered him a way out of debt, he sold information. He was supposed to leak your location after the funeral. I intercepted his message." Wind tore at the papers. Down below, a siren wailed closer. "I have proof," Mateo said, "but you have to run now. He'll come for both of us." "I'm not running again." "You have to." He reached for her hand. The warmth of him, real, undeniable, sent tears spilling down her face. "I thought I buried you," she said. "I thought my heart died that day." "I buried myself," he murmured, "so you could live." Footsteps clanged up the metal stairs. A flashlight beam swept across the roof. Louis's voice. "Rosa, step away from him." She turned. "You lied to me." "It's not what you think," he shouted above the wind. "They're watching us both. Give me the folder. We can end this clean." Mateo's hand tightened around hers. "Don't." Rosa looked from one man to the other, the ghost she loved, the ally she'd trusted, and felt the weight of both lives pressing against her chest. Louis took another step forward, lowering the gun he held loosely by his side. "Don't make me choose, Rosa." "You already did," she said quietly. Before anyone moved again, a helicopter's spotlight split the sky, blinding white. A loudspeaker barked, "Hands where we can see them!" Police, but whose side? Louis dropped the weapon and raised his hands. Mateo pulled Rosa behind a vent, shielding her as officers stormed the roof. Chaos, orders, shouting, the scrape of boots. Through the confusion, one thought burned in her mind. He's alive, but for how long this time? When the dust settled, both men were gone. She sat in the back of an ambulance, a blanket around her shoulders, eyes fixed on the folder clutched to her chest. The officer taking her statement said Lewis had escaped custody. The helicopter lost him over the harbor. Mateo had vanished too. No body, no trace. Some said he was taken. Some said he fled before the police could silence him again. Rosa said nothing. She only whispered, "He kept his promise." That night she returned home alone. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock on the mantel, Mateo's old repair shop clock, still keeping time as if nothing had changed. On the table lay a small note in handwriting she knew by heart. "The truth never ends, Rosa. It just changes the shape of its silence." She pressed the paper to her chest and closed her eyes. The storm outside began again, gentle this time, washing the city clean, at least for a night. Morning sunlight crawled across the walls like an intruder, unsure if it was welcome. Rosa sat at the edge of her bed, still in yesterday's clothes, staring at her own reflection in the mirror across the room. The woman looking back wasn't a widow anymore. She wasn't even sure she was the same woman who'd buried her husband, trusted a friend, or stood beside a coffin filled with lies. What stared back at her now was someone stripped down to instinct, part grief, part anger, part survival. Mateo was alive. Luis was a traitor. And somewhere between those two truths, Rosa's reality had cracked open. The folder he'd left behind lay on the dresser. She had read it 3 times through the night, tracing each line with shaking fingers. Every page felt like a wound reopening. Bank statements, hidden wire transfers, memos signed by men in suits who smiled on television and prayed in public. And at the center of it, Lewis's name, a signature confirming payouts labeled consulting fees. The betrayal felt worse than the funeral. A knock on the door made her flinch. She hesitated, then peered through the peephole. It was Officer Clara Moreno, the only person from the precinct she still trusted. Rosa opened the door a crack. "You're hard to reach these days," Clara said, stepping in quietly. Her hair was damp from the rain, her eyes tired. "I heard about the rooftop. The department's conflicted." "Conflicted?" Rosa repeated. "Some say you and Louis were part of a setup. Others think you're a whistleblower trying to take down Alcott's people." Clara set down a thermos of coffee. "Either way, you've stirred a hornet's nest." Rosa's laugh came out hollow. "So justice comes with a price tag now?" "It always did," Clara replied. Her eyes fell on the open folder. "That's your husband's work?" "Yes, and proof that this goes beyond Alcott. These signatures, see this one? That's Lewis's. And this belongs to Judge Navarro. He signed off on the falsified autopsies." Clara's face tightened. "Navarro? That's high up." "I don't care how high, it ends today." "Rosa, you need protection. You can't just walk into the courthouse." "I'm not walking, I'm marching." By noon, Rosa was in the city again, the folder clutched like a lifeline. The air smelled of wet asphalt and exhaust. Every face she passed looked either too familiar or too foreign. At every corner, she thought she saw a reflection of Mateo, his gait, his coat, the way he used to hold his shoulders when he was thinking. Grief and hope played tricks on the mind. She reached the courthouse steps, climbed them slowly, each one echoing like a heartbeat. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed, cold and unfeeling. She asked to see the Attorney General. The clerk barely looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" "I have evidence," Rosa said, voice firm, "of federal corruption." The clerk froze mid-keystroke. "Wait here." She waited. 5 minutes, then 10. The air thickened, heavy with the kind of silence that always comes before a lie. When the clerk returned, her smile was brittle. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The Attorney General is out of town." "Then I'll leave this with you," Rosa said, setting the folder on the counter. As she turned to go, she noticed something strange. The security guard by the entrance was watching her too closely. When she glanced again, he looked away. Too late. He had been listening through an earpiece. Her instincts screamed trap. She pivoted and walked toward the side corridor, pretending to check her phone. The guard moved after her. She slipped into a stairwell and started down 2 flights before pushing through a maintenance door into an alley that smelled of damp brick and garbage. A second later, heavy boots echoed above her. They were following. Rosa broke into a run. Her heart pounded against her ribs, not from fear alone, but from the terrifying clarity of knowing she had touched something too big to stop now. She ducked into an old cafe on the corner, a place she and Mateo had once gone when money was tight, but dreams were large. The same bell jingled over the door. The same red vinyl booths lined the wall. A waitress recognized her faintly and smiled. "Coffee, Mrs. Delgado?" Rosa nodded, breathless. "To go." While the woman prepared it, Rosa sat at a corner table and opened her phone. There was only one person she could risk contacting, Elena Duarte, the journalist. She typed fast, "Evidence compromised. Someone inside the courthouse is working for them. Need backup. Call me." A reply came almost instantly. "Already knew. They're erasing everything from our servers. Meet me in 20 minutes. Old printing warehouse on 9th. Rosa closed her phone and stood up. "Coffee's on the house," the waitress said kindly. "You look like you've had a long night." Rosa managed a smile. More than one. The printing warehouse on 9th was empty, a skeleton of industry. Dust floated in the late light like slow snow. Elena's car was parked outside, engine off, windows fogged. Rosa approached carefully. The journalist stepped out, clutching her tablet. "They hit us this morning. Took the story offline, pulled the footage, wiped the servers clean. Someone inside fed them everything." Rosa showed her the folder. "This is all that's left." Elena opened it, scanning the pages with frantic eyes. "This is enough. We can rebuild the story from this alone." "Then we do it tonight," Rosa said. Elena looked up. "And risk our lives?" "Mateo risked his for this. I won't let it die in a filing cabinet." For a moment, the journalist studied her as if seeing her for the first time. "You've changed, Mrs. Delgado." Rosa smiled faintly. "Grief is a teacher. Betrayal is a degree." They worked in the back office for hours, surrounded by whirring machines that hadn't printed anything in decades. Elena re-uploaded the evidence to an independent satellite feed, bypassing the networks. Rosa read aloud the sections Mateo had annotated, her voice trembling between rage and reverence. When the transfer reached 90%, Elena stood and stretched. "Once this hits a mirror server, no one can erase it." Rosa stared at the blinking cursor. "A mirror," she whispered, "like the reflection you can't escape." "What?" "Nothing." She forced a smile. "Just remembering something Mateo said." The progress bar froze at 94%. The lights flickered. "Power's dropping," Elena muttered. "They're jamming the signal." A faint hum filled the air, low, rhythmic, mechanical. Outside, headlights swept across the wall. Rosa moved to the window. A black SUV idled by the curb. Men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the building. "They found us," she whispered. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard. "If I can just finish the upload." The screen went black. From outside came the crunch of gravel. Then a voice amplified through a bullhorn. "Mrs. Delgado, step out slowly. We just want to talk." Rosa froze. That voice. She knew it. She turned toward the darkened glass of the window and caught her reflection. Tired, trembling, and behind her, the faint silhouette of a man in a trench coat standing in the doorway. Luis. His reflection overlapped with hers, like two ghosts caught in the same mirror. Rain hit the warehouse roof like 1,000 clocks out of rhythm. Rosa stood motionless near the printing press, its metal frame cold against her back. The only light came from a hanging bulb that swung with the wind, throwing long shadows that trembled across the floor. Luis stepped fully into the room, water dripping from his coat, his eyes hollow. He wasn't holding a gun this time, just a folder, the same one she thought she'd handed to the Attorney General. "You never learn," he said quietly. You never stop surviving, she answered. They faced each other in the gray half-light, two people bound by lies that had once felt like safety. Louis sighed and set the folder on the table. You think you know everything? You think Mateo was the saint, and I'm the devil who sold him out. Rosa didn't blink. You took blood money for silence. He smiled, tired, crooked. You think I kept any of it? He unbuttoned his sleeve, rolling it up to show a scar that ran from wrist to elbow. Old, uneven, burned. They marked me before they marked him, he said. The night he disappeared, they made me choose. Help them fake his death or join him in the ground. I thought I could buy time, save both of you. But once you start lying for monsters, they teach you to lie to yourself. Rosa's throat tightened. You could have told me. And put a target on your back? You think they wouldn't come for you? He stepped closer. You were the one thing Mateo begged me to protect. Her heartbeat faltered. You saw him. Until the end, Louis said. He believed the files were enough. He didn't know Alcott was just a clerk in a larger engine. Then who? She asked. Louis hesitated. The bulb flickered. Judge Navarro was the face, but the hand that fed him was higher. The department itself. They built the ghost policy system to launder campaign money. Mateo uncovered it, and suddenly every cop, every lawyer we trusted turned deaf. Rosa pressed her palm to the table to steady herself. And you? I thought I could outsmart them. Play both sides, keep you alive until the storm passed. He laughed once, bitter. But storms don't pass, Rosa. They learn your address. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with all the words they had buried under fear. Finally, she said, So why come now? Because the truth burns, Louis whispered, and I'm done choking on the smoke. He slid the folder toward her. Inside were new pages, surveillance reports, photos of officials exchanging envelopes, recordings of board meetings. Each page carried his initials. I collected these after Mateo vanished. Every time I tried to deliver them, someone died. This, he tapped the folder, is my last confession. Rosa looked at him, eyes shining but dry. You want forgiveness? He shook his head. I want you to finish it. Lightning flashed through the high windows, bleaching his face white. For an instant she saw the man he used to be, the paramedic who pulled strangers from burning cars, who believed life could still be saved. Then thunder followed, loud enough to make the rafters groan. You said they'd kill me, she murmured. So why am I still here? Because you kept moving, he said. You did what none of us could, turned grief into armor. From the corner, Elena Duarte's voice broke in, hoarse, urgent. She had slipped back through the side door, rain in her hair. They're coming, she said. 2 cars, no markings. Louis looked at Rosa. Take the evidence and go. Through the print tunnels. There's a way to the river. And you? She asked. He smiled faintly. Someone has to slow them down. No, Rosa said, gripping his arm. You don't buy redemption with sacrifice. Maybe not, he said, but it buys you 10 minutes. He pulled away before she could stop him. As he walked toward the entrance, he said over his shoulder, Tell Mateo I kept my promise. Tell him I never stopped watching the door. Rosa felt something twist inside her chest, the same mix of fury and forgiveness that comes only when you see the human under the monster. Elena touched her shoulder. We have to go. Rosa gathered the folder, clutching it to her chest as they slipped into the narrow tunnel that once fed newsprint to the presses. Behind them, the echo of boots and shouting filled the warehouse. At the end of the tunnel, Rosa turned for one last look. Through the slats of the floor, she saw Louis facing the doorway, hands raised, voice steady. A blinding flash followed, then silence. No gunshot, no scream, just the hum of machines dying one by one. Elena grabbed her hand. Don't look back. They emerged into the open night. The rain had stopped again, but steam rose from the asphalt like ghosts leaving the earth. Across the river, city lights shimmered, blurred by mist. Rosa sank to her knees, the folder pressed against her heart. "Justice isn't clean," Elena said softly. "No," Rosa answered, "but it's alive." They stood, drenched and shaking. Elena's phone buzzed, one new message from an unknown number. He kept his promise. The screen flickered and went dark. Rosa closed her eyes. "We finished this," she said. In the distance, sirens began to converge on the far side of the river, where the warehouse still smoked under the gray sky. Dawn came like an apology. No thunder, no sirens, just soft light spilling through curtains that hadn't moved all night. Rosa stood by the window, holding the same cup of coffee she hadn't finished since midnight. The city outside was still wet from rain, gleaming in streaks of silver and gold. Every rooftop shimmered as if the storm had wiped away the lies. On the table beside her lay the folder, open now, half empty. Most of the evidence had already been handed to the Reporters Network the previous night. The rest would go to the Federal Bureau this morning. Louis's final gift, Mateo's final proof. The story was no longer theirs. It belonged to the world. A faint knock came at the door. When Rosa opened it, a young courier stood there, holding a plain brown envelope. "Delivery for Mrs. Delgado," he said. "No return address." She signed and waited until the elevator doors closed before tearing it open. Inside was a single photograph. It showed the garden behind their old house, the one she and Mateo had built from scrap wood and prayer. Beneath it, written in his familiar handwriting, "You kept your promise, so did I." Her hands trembled. For the first time in months, her tears were not from fear. By mid-morning, news stations across the country ran the headline, "Government Inquiry Expands After Insurance Scandal Expose." Elena Duarte's broadcast played on every screen in the cafe downtown. Rosa sat in the corner, scarf pulled around her face, listening to her husband's name ring through the speakers. The late Mateo Delgado uncovered a multi-million-dollar fraud that reached into the upper levels of the Justice Department. His wife, Rosa, carried his evidence to the world. A round of applause filled the cafe. No one knew she was there, and that was how she preferred it. Justice didn't need her face. It only needed her courage. She slipped a small envelope across the counter to the cashier. "Pay for everyone's coffee," she said, in honor of a man who never stopped believing truth matters. The cashier smiled without recognizing her. "That's kind of you, ma'am." "It's what he would have done," she replied. Later that afternoon, Rosa took a train back to the small coastal town where everything had begun. The air smelled of salt and pine, the way it had when she and Mateo were young, before ambition, before fear. She walked the familiar path to the cemetery. The grave she once thought held her husband now bore a new inscription carved beneath his name. He lived for truth. She carried it. She knelt, laying a single sunflower on the stone. The petals glowed bright against the gray marble, a defiant burst of light. "You were right," she whispered. "The truth burns, but it also warms." A breeze moved through the trees, gentle, almost human. For a heartbeat, she could have sworn she felt a hand on her shoulder, the same steady touch that used to guide her through every storm. When she turned, only sunlight stood there. A month later, Rosa opened a small office near the harbor with a hand-painted sign above the door. The Mateo Delgado Foundation, for truth and protection of whistleblowers. The first visitors were two young women carrying files in their hands and fear in their eyes. They told stories of missing pensions, forged signatures, and families silenced by power. Rosa listened the way Mateo once had, patient, careful, seeing people as evidence of hope, not just victims of injustice. She promised them what she had once promised her husband. "We'll make it right." Evenings were quiet now. She still heard the sea through the cracked window, still brewed coffee for two out of habit. Sometimes she played the recording of his voice saved from the investigation, his steady tone saying, "If anyone hears this, it means I failed to keep Rosa safe." She would smile faintly and whisper back, "You didn't fail." One night, while filing new case papers, she found the old phone, the one that had delivered every haunting message. Its screen was cracked, battery low, but when she plugged it in, it flickered to life. There was one unread text, time-stamped 2 weeks after the rooftop. "Go outside." Rosa hesitated, then stepped onto the porch. The sky was scattered with stars. Down by the fence, the old street lamp blinked twice. The same rhythm as the knock on that roof, 3 short, 2 long. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, the air heavy with jasmine and sea spray. "Good night, Mateo," she whispered. "Rest easy. I'll keep the light on." Years passed quietly. People began to tell her story. The widow who unmasked a government fraud, the woman who turned loss into legacy. But she never corrected them when they left out her husband's name. She knew he was in every page, every headline, every heartbeat of truth that still dared to speak. Every anniversary she visited his grave with new flowers and the same promise. "I'll keep fighting until truth doesn't need hiding." And each time the wind would rise gently, scattering the petals across the path, as if carrying her vow farther than her voice could reach. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Rosa sat on her porch, watching the tide roll in. The last rays of light caught the reflection in her window, a faint image of 2 silhouettes side by side. For a moment she almost believed he was sitting next to her again, hands folded, quiet smile on his face. But when she blinked, only her own reflection remained, and peace. That was my story. A story about truth, love, and promises that never die. What would you have done in Rosa's place? Tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, and let's see how far this one can travel.